Stuck in a lifeless relationship with Jerry, I realized I deserve more than not abusive. As I reflect on my feelings for Carl, I can't help but wonder, can I leave without shattering Sophia's heart? I'm drowning, but how do I break free? This situation involves a significant amount of background information. I will refer to my boyfriend as Jerry, 26 years old. Our mutual friend is named Carl, 33 years old. The father of my child, who is 34 years old, is Robert. My daughter, who is nearly 4 years old, is named Sophia. This is a lengthy explanation, so here is a summary. Jerry and I entered our relationship too quickly after I left the abusive Robert. We have now been together for 3.5 years. Robert has changed and has become an excellent co-parent, but he now works out of town and I have no childcare except for Jerry and Jerry's mother. I work unusual hours, earn significantly more money, and am responsible for our entire household, yet I feel overwhelmed. The only thing Jerry excels at is loving Sophia, although he can be quick to anger when it comes to parenting. I ignored every warning sign because my only standard was a lack of abuse. Now his personality seems almost non-existent, a condition that has persisted for a year. I have repeatedly asked him how I can assist him, whether it is depression or something else, and the conversation leads nowhere. His personality feels like a brick wall, and he contributes minimally, only providing 30% of the income and being a decent stepfather. I have been friends with Carl for 4 years and have recently developed feelings for him. I do not genuinely see this leading anywhere even if I were single, but it has made me realize that I deserve more than just a relationship that is simply not abusive. I deserve to have genuine effort put into my happiness. I feel trapped and uncertain about how to proceed from here. The real story begins now. I have always dated older men, for better or worse, starting at the age of 17. Jerry is the first romantic partner I have had who is my own age. My relationship with Robert was very emotionally manipulative, largely due to his drug use. At 21 years old, I became pregnant shortly after we began dating, naively unaware of how serious the situation was until I was a few months pregnant. I essentially left as soon as I recovered from my cesarean section. If I had not become pregnant, I doubt we would have lasted beyond a brief fling. Robert and I despised one another for about a year, which made co-parenting very challenging. However, when Sophia was around a year and a half, things began to improve. Today, we are great friends. He has been sober for 2 years and is a very active and loving father. We now share custody equally. I started talking to Jerry shortly after leaving Robert. He was my coworker, and I had known him for about a year at that point, but he had never flirted or overstepped any boundaries while I was with Robert. We became closer friends once I returned from maternity leave, and a mutual friend informed me that he was in love with me and suggested that I discuss my expectations with him. After work one day, I asked Jerry to sit in my car with me, and I spoke very frankly and honestly with him. Paraphrasing, I explained that I sensed he had feelings for me and reciprocated those feelings, but that my life was chaotic at the moment. I had become a new mother when Sophia was just 4 months old, and I was now a single mother financially responsible for everything. I returned to work 3 weeks after giving birth to support us. Robert despised me and I would likely need to take him to court. I felt that I was not ready to be in a relationship and proposed that we could remain friends, see how things developed, or completely cut ties and just be coworkers. The decision was his. Jerry said he would love to see where things could go. I was astonished, as I thought he would want to flee in the opposite direction. I could hardly believe that someone would want to be with me. I had thought I would never find love again after becoming a single mother at a young age before I had achieved any of my personal goals. Foolishly, we continued talking, and by the time my daughter was 7 months old, we officially became a couple. Robert detested this and constantly tried to make our lives miserable, but we persevered. In terms of Jerry's background, he was 23 years old, living with his mother, who had not been employed since he was a child, along with 4 roommates. Their home was in disarray and their pets were neglected. He did not have a driver's license despite living in an area that required transportation. He had not been in a relationship since his first love at age 18. In hindsight, these were all red flags, but I initially considered him to be a sweet, lovable, misunderstood guy whose family was hindering his progress. While this may have been partly true, he showed no desire to change his situation until we became a couple. Thus, I found myself in an emotionally vulnerable position after an extremely traumatic year and a half with Robert, which included a harrowing birth and postpartum experience. I was managing well on my own with Sophia and felt accomplished. Furthermore, Jerry was willing to wait for me. He catered to my needs and never argued. He concurred with everything I said. He adored Sophia from the moment they met. We enjoyed dates, concerts, and many exciting activities, both with Sophia and without her when Robert had her. We moved in together within less than a year. Everything continued in this positive manner. I was amazed that someone would never argue with me, was not controlling, let me see my friends whenever I wanted, and wanted to actively participate in my daughter's life. I needed to teach him to drive, how to put bills in his name, and other adulthood skills, but he was managing well. Now let's introduce Carl into the mix. Carl was previously Jerry's and my boss. From the very first day of my job years ago before I even became pregnant, I felt an instant connection with Carl, and I mean instant. We share all the same interests, enjoy the same music, and have a matching sense of humor. I looked forward to shifts with him as we would laugh so hard we often cried. However, that was all it was. Carl was also good friends with Jerry, although company policy prohibited us from socializing with our boss outside of work hours. Fast forward about a year and a half from when Jerry and I moved in together. Robert and I are now on friendly terms. He is sober and we have a cordial relationship. He even becomes friends with Jerry, which I never anticipated. Jerry is now seen as a second father to my daughter. She loves him dearly and cannot remember a time when he was not part of her life. By this point, we have been together roughly 2.5 years. However, Jerry's work performance declined significantly. He became one of the least productive employees and everyone began to ask me what was wrong. I had no answers. I tried to talk to him daily about the issue, whether it was depression or something I had done, but I received no clarifying responses. I mentioned on several occasions that perhaps our current life with bills and parenting was more than he anticipated, especially since he had a late start in adulthood. I suggested that he might not be ready for these responsibilities to be his first real experience living alone. I had lived independently with Sophia for a year and on my own for 2 years before that, starting at age 19. I mentioned that maybe he needed a chance to enjoy his early 20s and experience life differently before committing to such responsibilities. He vehemently insisted that this was not the problem and stated, "I would never leave you no matter what you did." Looking back, that is a red flag all on its own. By this point, Carl had left our job for another position, but we all remained friends throughout this transition. We have hung out with him outside of work several times since he is no longer our boss. We have a group chat together and engaged in conversation for months, but eventually Jerry stopped participating. He still reads the messages but doesn't respond, leading to just me and Carl talking. Eventually, we began to text privately. Jerry was aware of this but did not view it as suspicious and was fine with it. Jerry ultimately left his job and joined Carl at his new workplace. They were permitted to be friends there, so none of our collective friendships changed. Jerry continued to ignore the group chat, and while Jerry and Carl are still friends, they only speak at work due to Jerry's withdrawal from all communication outside of work. In contrast, Carl and I text frequently. As of now, our exchanges are completely innocent. We discuss music, television shows, work, and life. From the time Jerry's work ethic began to decline and he switched jobs, taking a pay cut, by the way, everything shifted. Sophia entered her challenging 2-year-old phase and became very difficult to manage. Jerry abruptly changed from a loving, attentive stepfather to someone who was constantly irritated by her. Yes, children can be annoying, especially during this stage, but he was persistently frustrated. I stopped being the spearhead for planning dates and outings, so they ceased entirely. He stopped assisting with household chores, and if I did not take the initiative to do something, it remained undone. Period. We ceased being intimate, as the only effort he made towards shared time was half-hearted gestures, grasping my entire body in the middle of the night while I was trying to sleep or nudging against me in the morning when I was pressed for time to get to work. During ideal moments, he remained distant and uninterested in engaging with me, often glued to his computer without any form of interaction. During this period, I began communicating with Carl more extensively. I think this was around the time I began to develop feelings for him, albeit I was primarily in denial. We never once crossed any boundaries or flirted, we simply conversed. All the time, about anything and everything. Jerry and I had a few decent months together. Although it did not feel like it had in the past, I mistakenly believed that I had just become too busy and preoccupied with life to be bothered by our relationship's changes. I went through life on autopilot. We enjoyed a couple of trips and had fun, but the spark was absent. It felt more like a trip with my platonic best friend. He continued to neglect aspects of his daily responsibilities. We hosted a small Christmas gathering with friends on Christmas Eve since Sophia would be at Robert's house until Christmas morning. Throughout the evening, Jerry barely acknowledged me, which was fine since I rarely looked at him either. We were engaged in conversation with our friends and having a wonderful time. While playing a board game together, Carl and I became deeply engrossed in a serious discussion about our lives. The alcohol prompted some emotional sharing regarding our experiences. Meanwhile, Jerry was oblivious, talking to our other friends. When it was Carl's turn, we oddly lost track of time and did not notice for a full 2 minutes. I suddenly realized how close I was to Carl's face, how intensely he was gazing into my eyes, and how engaged we were in our conversation. I looked around the group and noticed everyone staring at us, my cheeks flushing. I made eye contact with a friend who seemed to recognize something significant. Carl jokingly interjected that we were trauma dumping, and everyone, including Jerry, laughed. Jerry appeared not to recognize any potential significance in that moment. For me, however, I believe that was the instant I acknowledged my feelings for Carl. Thankfully, no one in the room mentioned that moment again. I attempted to suppress my feelings and push them aside. We maintained our usual texting habits, but nothing else noteworthy transpired, and he remained friendly with Jerry, who worked alongside him daily. We went through periods of not communicating for weeks and then resumed chatting when one of us had something to discuss. It was always nothing more than that, and this cycle continued for months. One weekend, a group of work friends decided to go to a bar. Since Sophia was with Robert, I called Jerry to see if he wanted to join us. He said he was tired and preferred to stay home playing video games, but he encouraged me to go. This was typical behavior since he knew all my work friends and it was a diverse mix of men and women. There was nothing about this dynamic that inspired distrust. When I arrived, Carl was present. It was the first time he had seen most of the group besides me since he had switched jobs about a year prior. Everyone was thrilled to see him. A group of about 7 of us ended up sitting in a circle in a parking lot long after the bars had closed, talking until 5 a.m. Toward the end of the night, I offered to give a friend a ride home who had known Carl since childhood. When we got into the car, she said, "Babe, I see the sparkle in your eye when you look at my friend. I'm 99% sure it's mutual. I don't know what you're going to do about that, but I figured I'd let you know." Carl and I barely communicated in the week after that incident. The following week, Robert informed me that he had received an incredible job opportunity but would be working out of town for half of the year. I encouraged him to take it, assuring him I would find childcare. I work primarily evenings and weekends and earn excellent money, so pursuing a daytime job during daycare hours would likely be a pay cut. Jerry offered to adjust his work schedule for some days, while his mother volunteered to help on the other days. My family and Robert's family are practically non-existent, so they were not an option for support. It has been about 6 months since this development. Jerry's and my relationship has dramatically deteriorated. The stress of being a primary caregiver around the clock may be contributing to the situation. However, all the issues I had with him previously are now magnified. Over the course of more than a year out of our 3-year relationship, he has never once recognized or admitted to experiencing depression, anxiety, or any mental health issues. He has not acknowledged anything I have done wrong or offered ideas on how I can assist him or change my behavior to improve our situation. I sit down with him to discuss things at least 2 or 3 times a month. In every conversation, I feel as if I am talking to a wall and receive only "I don't know" as a response. Alternatively, he will cry and insist that he is a terrible person and that I deserve so much better and should hate him. It becomes an ongoing pity party and nothing changes. I always ask multiple times if he has any issues with me whatsoever. He must tell me immediately. He always insists, "No, you're perfect, you can do no wrong." At this point, that response annoys me because, of course, I can do wrong. I probably make mistakes all the time, just communicate with me. This entire experience has been incredibly frustrating. Without Robert here, I genuinely do not receive a break and I feel overwhelmed. I recognize my privilege and luck in having previously shared custody with Robert, and I do appreciate that. Nonetheless, I am overwhelmed now. I work more hours than Jerry with longer hours, and I make literally twice as much money. Additionally, I have a second job coaching high school softball that keeps me busier than ever. I handle all household cleaning, grocery shopping, and appointments. Most of the bills are in my name, and I am the sole individual who manages our busy lives. Currently, I lack childcare assistance. I work as a bartender, earning between 25 and 50 in tips per hour, and I am also re-enrolling in college online for the upcoming fall semester. I cannot afford to make 15 to 17 per hour at a daytime job without a degree, particularly when I must also pay for childcare and cover 70% of our bills in this expensive area of living. If we were to break up, I would be responsible for all the expenses. Rent is relatively affordable for my area, but it would be incredibly challenging to cut costs. While I could move back in with my family, they live an hour away and lack space. I would not qualify for assisted housing due to last year's income, as I made too much as a bartender. Do people in my area manage as single parents on lower salaries? Definitely. However, this has been my income for the past 5 years and I have not earned less since having a child. I would not know where to begin when it comes to reducing expenses and changing my entire lifestyle. I might be able to get Robert to send me money, but he already pays child support, and I would feel uncomfortable asking for assistance with anything beyond daycare costs. To complicate matters, I deeply regret transitioning into a relationship so quickly after the birth of a literal newborn. Sophia loves Jerry immensely despite his constant displays of being inconvenienced by her. She just wants him to play with her all the time, and it breaks my heart. I believe this situation is more complicated than if he were her biological father. Robert and I healed, figured out how to co-parent, and became friends. If Jerry and I were to break up, he would not be legally entitled to any shared custody arrangements. If I were to enter another relationship after this, I would not allow that person to meet my child for at least a year, nor would I move in with them for at least 2 or 3 years. But I digress, we learn as we go. Additionally, I feel guilty for relying on Jerry and his mother for childcare. They love Sophia as if she were their own, but it would feel terrible if I left and expressed gratitude for their help, then vanished. I would feel incredibly bad for Sophia and for Jerry's feelings regarding their bond, developed over the past couple of years. I know she may be too young to be deeply affected, but the concern lingers. As for my current standing, we are 3.5 years into our relationship. For the last year, I have felt unhappy about the same issues. However, it is only in the past 3 months that I have even considered ending the relationship as a possibility. Even so, it still feels as though breaking up is not an actual option. I feel so profoundly trapped, yet I am not happy. Another thing to consider is that Jerry is not unkind to me. He is not emotionally abusive, manipulative, or controlling. He does not treat me poorly. He simply does nothing. It has taken me this long and a significant amount of healing to realize that being not abusive is not enough for a satisfying relationship. I entered this relationship with standards so low that the bar was practically at ground level. Yet, I have come to understand that I need more than the bare minimum of not being abused in order to be content. Who could have imagined that, right? Regarding Carl, our communication has gone back and forth for the past 6 months. I see him infrequently in person these days. When we do meet, that intangible connection remains, though we rarely see one another. One day, we engaged in a profound text conversation, during which he opened up to me about a woman he had previously dated 2 years ago, of whose details he had never shared with anyone. We all knew it had happened, but not how it had ended. It was a messy situationship, mostly her doing. She ultimately returned to her ex. I told him that although she had treated him poorly, I understood her perspective. She had built her entire life with one person, and the other man had been a stepfather to her child. Leaving him for Carl would disrupt everything. He acknowledged this and said he truly appreciated my insight because he had not previously considered her perspective. I related to him by expressing that I too felt trapped in my unhappiness, yet unable to leave due to the life I had built with Jerry. I apologized for discussing my feelings, aware of his friendship with Jerry. He replied, "No, I understand." I could sense that he was struggling to contribute meaningfully to his life right now, and I wondered how anyone could feel fulfilled under those circumstances. He then mentioned, "By the way, you know Andre, another employee at their workplace, is planning to pursue you if you and Jerry end up calling it quits." We laughed at this because we both knew Andre had no chance. We joked back and forth for a while about how Andre needed to lower his standards considering his arrogant demeanor and lack of anything substantive to offer. I remarked, "Yeah, I will never again take a chance on a man who has a history of inconsistency or laziness." Carl then said, "I won't lie, I had the same mindset as Andre for a while. I was totally ready to pursue you if the opportunity ever arose because I know I have my life together and would genuinely have a chance. But I realized that is not a cool thing to do," followed by some laughing emojis. In that moment, my heart stopped in both dreadful and slightly joyful ways. Great, all my suspicions regarding the mutual feelings have been confirmed. To clarify, he truly does have his life in order. He ended a lengthy relationship a few years ago with mutual respect and no hard feelings. He had that one situationship we discussed and a few casual dates, but he is mostly content being single. He is not chasing after women or sleeping around. He owns his home, earns excellent money with fantastic benefits as a general manager at a high-end restaurant. He has investments and a substantial savings account. He frequently travels, usually alone. He genuinely seems to have everything figured out. He might not be exceptionally attractive, but he is by no means unattractive either, and I typically do not focus on appearances. For me, chemistry and personality matter most. He genuinely seems to have it all together. Since that day about a month ago, we have hardly stopped texting until just a few days ago. We have still never actually flirted, nor have we ever done so through text, only occasionally joking around with friends when we see each other. The connection between us is still palpable, with chemistry emanating from being in each other's presence, yet we have not acted on it. I vowed to pause communication for a while. I do not want to cross any boundaries at this point while working on my life. He is not blocked, but I have not spoken to him in 4 days. I informed him that I am dealing with a lot and would not be responsive for a while, leaving things at that. Concerning the situation with Carl, let's hypothetically say I broke up with Jerry tomorrow, figured out my life with Sophia, and learned how to cover my bills and childcare. If Carl were to ask me out, I would respond the same way I told Jerry years ago. Still, I would insist that life is too chaotic for a relationship right now rather than saying, "Let's see where this goes." Instead, I would advise him to ask again when I'm more stable and have healed. It could take years, so he should not wait for me. I would still like to remain his friend, but nothing more for the time being. Ultimately, this has opened my eyes to the fact that I indeed do deserve better. It is possible for someone who has their life sorted out, someone consistent and trustworthy, and someone I know is a good person because I have been friends with him for such a long time to desire me. Initially, I felt infatuated with Jerry because I didn't believe anyone would want me unless they intended to manipulate and control me as Robert had done during his sober phases. I let go of all standards and overlooked every red flag and inconsistency simply because I thought he had too kind a heart to hurt me intentionally. He still possesses a very kind soul, but he has also become too, I don't know, stubborn, oblivious, lazy, depressed, and resistant to seeking help. I genuinely do not know what he is, but he is too whatever he is to realize that he is indirectly causing me significant pain by putting forth minimal effort. A friend of mine even asked him if we were okay, noting that I didn't seem very happy, and he told her directly, "I don't know what you're talking about, everything is perfect." Uh. So here I am coming to the realization that I could have so much more. Honestly, I would prefer to be alone at this stage. However, Sophia complicates everything. Additionally, I genuinely love Jerry, and I know that if I were to break up with him, he would most likely spiral into a deep depression, and I worry about what he might do. I care for him as if he were my best friend. While I am no longer in love with him, I still love him and do not want to see him suffer. He would likely move back in with his mother and never make any effort to improve his life or situation or seek a better job. Unfortunately, he was not proactive before I came along, nor during our relationship unless I guided him every step of the way, yet I dread pushing him deeper into whatever darkness surrounds him. Moreover, we planned a concert 8 months ago with myself, Carl, and Jerry. Carl arranged it and said, "I don't mind being the third wheel, you two are my only friends who enjoy this band, and it is coming up in 2 weeks. I feel immensely anxious about being around both of them for 2 days simultaneously." This event was organized before I recognized my feelings for Carl and before Jerry and I had deteriorated to this extent. In conclusion, I feel overwhelmed from all sides. I do not know what I am asking for aside from guidance on how to navigate this situation from here. Story 2. My fiancé cheated on me with his brother's girlfriend. You didn't know? Camilla and Mark dated before me, I revealed, igniting chaos. Now I'm married to Dylan, crafting our happy ending with twin toddlers, and a house Mark would have mocked. Life has a twisted way of freeing you. This all occurred between 2019 and 2021, but it has taken me 4 years to finally feel prepared to discuss it. I am not proud of everything that happened, but I endured it, and I believe I have finally made peace with it all. I 27 years old female met Mark 33 years old male when I was 20. He was older, calm, successful, and exactly what I thought I wanted. He had studied economics, worked in finance, and always looked as though he had stepped out of a magazine photo shoot. He was confident, mature, and everyone around me considered me fortunate to have a guy like him. 6 months later, I met his family, and that is when I met his younger brother, Dylan, now 31 years old male. He was 25 back then when I met him, but 27 when everything really exploded. Dylan was Mark's opposite in every way. Mark wore crisp button-down shirts and tailored pants. Dylan wore worn jeans, had tattoos peeking out from under his sleeves, played guitar at dive bars, and worked as an attorney, primarily taking pro bono cases and assisting neighbors as if it were second nature. He was warm, grounded, and present. The first time we spent time together, just the two of us, he took me to get my first tattoo. It was an impulsive decision. I loved it. Mark did not. He reacted in panic, told me it was unprofessional, and asked if I had gotten it to impress Dylan. That was our first serious argument. He made me feel so guilty that I nearly scheduled a removal appointment. That was the beginning of a long pattern: gaslighting, emotional control, and subtle manipulation. Still, I stayed. We became engaged. My parents adored him. They thought he was respectful, stable, and good on paper. They did not see what occurred in private: how he criticized the way I dressed, how he made me feel needy for desiring basic affection, how he dismissed my anxiety and told me I was overly emotional. Then Dylan brought his girlfriend, Camilla, to a family barbecue. She was sweet, warm, and polite. We surprisingly got along well. We began doing activities together, grabbing coffee, attending yoga classes, and texting about trivial television shows. I even confided in her things I probably should not have shared with a new friend, such as my occasional uncertainty about my engagement. I observed Camilla and Mark behaving strangely. They avoided making eye contact. Their conversations were brief and awkward. Something felt off, but I could not quite explain it. Then, at dinner with a mutual friend, I discovered the truth. Isn't it strange that Dylan is dating Mark's ex? That sentence turned my world upside down. Camilla had previously dated Mark for 2 years before I entered the picture. No one informed me, not Mark, not Dylan, not even Camilla, who had ample opportunity to mention it during our coffee outings. I felt completely humiliated. After that, I watched Mark grow cold and distant. He was always on his phone. Camilla began to appear more frequently, and although she and Mark hardly spoke in front of others, I caught glances exchanged between them that communicated too much. Meanwhile, Dylan acted contrary to Mark. When I needed to visit my aunt in another city, he drove me. When our cat faced a health emergency, he left work to take us to the veterinarian because Mark could not leave a meeting. He brought me coffee and genuinely asked how I was feeling. He did not flirt, he simply showed up as a decent human being. Then came the texts. Mark left his phone on the bed. I was not snooping, but the screen lit up. Camilla, the messages were intimate. I still think about that weekend. Sometimes I wish things had unfolded differently. You felt like home. I froze, my chest ached, but I did not say anything, not yet. Days later, I questioned Mark about what was wrong between us. He claimed I was being dramatic. I asked if he was communicating with Camilla. He accused me of being insecure, a classic deflection. Later, I used his laptop to send an email to my sister, and curiosity got the better of me. I opened a folder I should not have accessed. Photos, chats, hotel receipts, videos. They had been sleeping together the entire time after Camilla was introduced to me, after she smiled at me and asked if I wanted to have brunch, and after she told me she hoped I would become her sister-in-law. I did not eat or sleep properly for 3 days. Mark did not seem to notice or care. He continued texting her as if nothing had occurred. I was punishing myself, questioning what I had done wrong. I grew up witnessing healthy relationships, my parents, my siblings. I did not want to be the one who failed even before getting married. Then came the family dinner. Every Saturday, we always gathered at their parents' house. Dylan and I cooked with their mother while Mark grilled with their father. Camilla arrived quiet, fidgety. It was overwhelming. At the dinner table, Mark made a joke about me and Dylan, always laughing together. I snapped. Perhaps I just prefer honesty, I stated. He smirked. What does that mean? Maybe I prefer people who do not lie about who they have slept with. Silence. I turned to Dylan. You did not know Camilla and Mark dated before me, and they have been sleeping together again. I saw the messages, the photos, and the receipts. Dylan froze, then calmly he stood up and punched Mark in the face. There was no shouting, no altercation, just one decisive hit. I left that night. I confronted Mark and told him that I knew everything. Initially, he denied it. Then he minimized it. Finally, he tried to blame me. I kicked him out. The following day, I texted Camilla. I did not yell or insult her. I simply stated that I was aware of what had transpired. She replied, it was not supposed to happen. I told her that I did not hate her, but I would never trust her again, and we were done forever. Mark left town within a month. Dylan cut off contact with him. Their parents were devastated but did not defend Mark. Their father remarked, you reap what you sow. Their mother cried frequently but expressed that she still hoped Dylan would find love again someday. She just did not anticipate it would be with me. My own parents were shocked. My mother repeatedly said, he fooled us. My father, who had adored Mark, actually apologized to me for pressuring me to settle down. They despised how much I had hidden my unhappiness. 2 months later, Dylan invited me to the Super Bowl. I almost declined, but I went. We laughed, drank beer, and yelled at the screen as if we were teenagers. It was enjoyable. We began dating cautiously, gradually, with no grand declarations and no rushing. One night, that same mutual friend mentioned something I will never forget. You know, you and Dylan were supposed to go on a date before all of this, right? Apparently, Dylan had been invited to a group dinner on the same night I met Mark. I was meant to be his blind date. However, Dylan had gotten into a minor car accident on the way and could not attend. I ended up sitting next to Mark instead. I recalled hearing sirens that night. I just did not realize they were for Dylan. Now I am 27 years old. Dylan and I are married. We live in a small house with a white fence, exactly the kind Mark once ridiculed as boring. We have twin toddlers, 2 dogs, and a lazy cat named Mango. I have 4 tattoos. The third one, Dylan gave it to me on our anniversary. Dylan and Mark have not spoken in years. Dylan claims he is at peace with it. He has forgiven but not forgotten. He does not miss him. Camilla moved away. I do not often think about her. But when I do, I remember her holding my hand during brunch discussing trust. All I know is this. I spent years convincing myself that being controlled was the same as being loved. It is not. Love does not punish, love does not gaslight, love does not betray you and then blame you for the pain. Sometimes the truth shatters everything, but sometimes it liberates you.